Hey everyone, how you doing? Welcome to DKTV. We're talking UFC 202. Oh my God, you've been waiting for it. The Conor fight, as everyone else is saying. But there's way more fights on the card. And we're going to find out some of those fights right now. Joining me from DK, New York, Zach Sold. Also bringing the pain, Mike Payne, UFC commentator, and Nick Webb, who you've seen before. Welcome, gentlemen. Are we excited about this fight?
Yes.
Very excited. Big fight. Everyone, Conor, which we'll get into. But first, we're just going to sort of banter around, talk about some of the undercards going on. I want to start out with first, Colby, Covington, Max Griffin. Nick, throw me in. Tell me about this matchup here. You got 9-1 Covington, 12-2 Max Griffin. How do you see this fight going on the undercard?
Well, Covington has had a few UFC fights. Max, bring the pain, Griffin is coming in on his first debut. Covington is a wrestler, and a big power wrestler at that. He's a two-time PAC champion and a one-time All-American. Griffin, on the other hand, is a bit all fury, all punches. So it's your classic striker versus grappler, but I think the grappler's got it. Covington's going to hold him down and smash him apart, and I think he's going to get a submission as well for DK points.
Wow, that's always good. He's 4-1, isn't he? The past 3 submissions. Zach, how do you see this one going?
I think 2 of his past wins are via submission, and like Nick said, he's a phenomenal wrestler. He has a wrestling base. He tends to spend a lot of time in his opponent's guard, but like Nick also said, Payne is just full forward pressure fighter, and I don't think he's really disciplined enough to stave off the takedowns of Covington. I think he's going to have a real tough time with this fight. It's a really tough debut for him. Hopefully he can prove some people wrong, maybe last a little bit longer, but I also see Covington coming out with a submission win.
What do you think? Do you know anything about this fight, Mike? Do you know Griffin? He's a pretty good power to knock out if he can get in, but it's Covington, as you say, could submit him.
I'm very much a stand-up. I like, obviously, people fighting. I think that, as Nick well knows, in all honesty, I think that he'll back away. He'll probably catch him with a left or a right, and that's it. Good night. I reckon the striker will win over the grappler.
Oh, big upset.
It would be a huge upset. It would be a huge upset.
Huge upsets. Those are what we like, huge upsets. You can always find those at DraftKings. Let's move on to our next one then. We're talking Magny Larkin. The 18-5 mark, Magny versus 17-5 Larkin. How do you see this match going again? Another good undercard match.
Yeah, I mean, this is the headliner for the Fight Pass prelims, and I think it has fight of the night potential for sure. Lorenz Larkin is a very flashy striker, gives him some fantasy upside because he can always end the night by knockout anytime. But Neil Magny is a really disciplined, really technical fighter. He's really long, he uses his range extremely well, and also a very savvy grappler. I mean, he got absolutely dismantled by Damian Maia, but there's no shame in that. I mean, one of the best grapplers ever to be in the octagon. But other than that, he's won 6 of his last 7, and he's an extremely technical guy, very disciplined, and he's not really going to get caught out by Lorenz Larkin. Magny's going off as a sizable favorite, and I think for good reason. I think he's probably going to take the win, but I would think if Magny wins, it's going to be by submission. If Larkin's able to take it, it's going to be by knockout.
All right, you mentioned Magny. He's got a bit more of a reach, a bit more power. How do you find this going? It's trying to get inside a guy like that.
Well, Magny's got one other special power. He appears to be made of rubber and doesn't follow the normal rules for damage. The last 2 fights, he's been knocked down twice in the first round, and he just stands back up and just grapples. As you said, very technical, never loses his head in those tight spots, which is what Larkin does to people. He runs in, puts the pressure on, drops a bombshell. And I think, yeah, you're right. Magny's going to, Zach's got it. Magny's going to be able to stand up to it, I think. Like I say, he's made of rubber, just going to bounce off him, and he's going to either grind it out or finish him in the second, I think, because Lorenz does get tired. He's got tired in his other fight where he didn't quite manage to finish it in the first, and the second and third were not good innings, I have to say. So, yeah, I've got Magny winning it.
You got Magny winning
again.
It. Now, Magny's got a bit of a soft chin as he's had in the past. Have you seen Magny at all before? You've watched this fight before, there, Nick?
I'll be honest, Wade, no.
Mike, sorry.
Call what you like.
Mr. Payne.
No, in truth be told, no. These weren't in any of my picks. I don't really know too much about them, but obviously from what you guys were saying, I would probably go with the rubber man. Really, to be honest with you, from a fight, if you can go with the flow in a fight and you can adapt to it, I think you've got an opportunity of winning. So I'll go with what.
And I think 2 things to watch in this fight are Larkin's ability to keep the takedown off. He has very good takedown defense, despite being a very kicking-oriented striker, which sometimes leads to people being taken down often. And B, I think it's going to be all about Larkin closing the distance. Magny is very long, very rangy for the welterweights, and if Larkin can't get inside that long jab, he's going to have a really tough night.
All right, let's move on to our next one then. Lobov versus Avila. How do you see this one going? This is a really interesting one. You were talking earlier about this, about the relationship between these guys. How do you see this one going? Because this is obviously a really good, exciting fight before this gets going.
I really like this fight. There's a lot of hostility between these two camps. Avila trains with Diaz, and Lobov trains with McGregor. Lobov is McGregor's main training partner, which is actually one of the advantages he brings into this. He's been training with McGregor for a long time, and everyone's seen the marked improvement in his performance since he's been training with McGregor. He's a sizable favorite up against Avila, who's been having a few tough outings in the UFC in the past. But everything that Diaz and Avila have been putting into camp, this training camp, seems like Avila's really ready to fight this time. I really like it. There's a lot of animosity between the camps. I think Lobov is going to take it. He's a little bit more experienced. He's a bigger fighter than Avila is, but I really do think that it's going to be a fun fight, back and forth, a lot of action.
Nick, Lobov is 0-2. He's actually got a losing career, if you actually look at it. Is this something he should be worried about against this? And he's favored against this young kid, this Sevilla. How do you see this one going?
Well, the first loss he had was the Ultimate Fighter Season 22 final. So he lost to Ryan Hall, but Ryan Hall's a bit of a monster, really. He was outmatched. Anyone would have lost to poor Ryan.
Fighting in a larger weight class as well than he really was comfortable in.
So he's cut back down. You're always going to have problems after your first cut as well. You can bring us up on this fame. Cutting weight is horrible. So he's going to lose his second. So now we've got him properly. We've got him where he wants to be. He's at the right weight. And yeah, I think he's going to make some surprises, and I think Avila is going to get shocked. I think he's going to get the debut nerves as well. Debuting on a 202 is going to be tough breaks as well. Normally they debut people in on a fight night on an undercard. He's going to have big lights, a big arena, and as you say, Lobov's got nothing to lose. He's 2-0. He knows he's got to fight for his life, and it's going to be a great fight as well.
How do you think about that, Mike, in terms of those two fighters, the fighter mentality between both those guys? A guy coming down to cut and a guy who's sort of got this losing record that, nothing to lose.
I think from the fight perspective, I think it definitely comes down to them factors. But one of the points I want to try and make is when you have two camps and then your two camps are fighting in the main card, it really comes down to the amount of pressure A, you're under, or B, you put yourself under. Let's say, for example, Diaz's camp loses that particular fight. The amount of pressure that's now going to be on Diaz, especially with the fan side of it, you've got the Irish contingency that are going to be there. So I think it's definitely going to be more of a supporters fight, really, rather than a fighters fight. They both can stand up. Anyway, anything can happen in a fight. But I think it's going to be a supporters fight. The pressure that's going to be put on them for the main event.
Okay, let's move on to our next one. We're talking women's bantamweight bout. Elizabeth Phillips, 10,200 versus Raquel Pennington, 9,200. Phillips is 1-2 in the UFC with all three of her fights going the distance, with only one win coming over Jessam Duke. How are you thinking about this one, the women's fight going on here, the bantamweight? Have you been following this one at all?
Oh, yes. Love the women's bantamweight, and it's all to play for at the moment. Last time we were sat in these seats, I said there'll be title flips.
Oh, yeah, you said
there
that.
have been 3 since we sat here, so it's all to play for, and they all know it. Yeah. So it's got great fight written over them. They're both very well-rounded fighters as well. They mix all 3 aspects of mixed martial arts together, both of them. I might have to go Pennington as a bit more well-rounded, but Phillips just is a wild woman. She loves to throw it, and she winds up on punches. I like that. She's always looking for a finish, which makes for an exciting fight. I've got Phillips taking it, actually, over the number 8 rank. I really think she's going to pull out the stops, but it's going to be a great fight to watch. And, yeah, points-wise, I think either of them can really bring home points. I think they can work well, and I think they can finish as well, possibly first or second round. But I got Phillips finishing in the second.
Oh, Phillips finishing in the second. Okay.
Oh, yeah,
I was going more Pennington, but because Phillips, Pennington's 4-2, only 2 losses coming in decision. So how do you think this is going to be for someone like that?
Yeah, I'm actually going to disagree with Nick on this one. I really like Pennington in this fight. She, like you said, is very well-rounded. She strikes well into her takedowns, which is what I like about her from a fantasy perspective. She'll land a few significant strikes, change levels, take her opponent down, and then get into guard and start laying down some ground and pound. I think that maybe the odds are flipped a little bit, in my opinion. I think Pennington probably should have been a favorite. She has a little bit more experience than Phillips in the octagon. And like I said, I just really like her upside from a fantasy perspective, especially going in as the underdog. I think she's been in with some of the best bantamweight women in the world, and that's something that Phillips has not done. I think both have a ton of output, and both we'll have to test their cardio in the later rounds, but I think overall Pennington's going to take it.
Mike, any you don't
Agree with Zach 100%. I think this is a fantasy DraftKings dream. I think it's going to go the distance. Most of them do go to the distance, and all of them, they want to punch, they want to take the takedowns. So I think the points will end up stacking up on this one. I reckon Pennington will win it personally. So I'm going with Zach, but I think it's going to be a DraftKings dream for points.
You're right. They both like to mix in a lot of takedowns. They don't do a lot with them, both of them. They tend to just like the points, but that's points for us too.
Points for us.
Take her down, please. Let us stand up, take her down again as many times as you can. Points all around.
Absolutely, I think so.
All right, let's move on to our next one. We're going Cody Garbrandt versus Takaya Mizugaki. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. Mizugaki has a long record in the UFC, whereas Cody Garbrandt not as long. Nick, how about this one? Where do you see this one going?
Well, Cody's undefeated in the UFC, and he's just coming off a monster win over Thomas Almeida. I mean, he's sold. I was sold on Cody Garbrandt after that fight. He could have gone either way. You know, he wasn't fighting high-level competition, was getting the knockouts. But then Thomas Almeida was number 7, and Cody's just gone in and stolen it from him. And it wasn't a close fight, really, if you remember it. Cody just put the pressure on him the whole time. Mizugaki he's another wild man. He loads up on his punches. He does like to swing, and he does like to get knackered out. But it doesn't really stop him. Like, in his last fight, he just kept throwing well into the third, everything in it. I don't think that's going to play well for Cody, play well for Mizugaki, because Cody's quite technical. And wild versus technical, you go with the technical condition fighter all the time. So I think it's going to be another win for Cody and keeping him there on 7-0, I think.
But they say Mizugaki's got 30 fights. Mike, have you been following this one as well? You've been watching how Garbrandt, as you say, he's this young sensation, 4-0, just ripping it up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think definitely old versus the new. I think Cody's going to come in. I think he's going to iron him spark out personally. He's going to switch him off in terms of a phrase. I think you've got the veteran. Yes, anything can happen. As you well know, you're in fights, anything can happen. But I do think Cody's got it all. I would hate to call if I had to, I would hate to call a round or a time on it.
Do it.
Yeah.
No one cares.
Okay, I'm going to go with, let's go Cody mid-second.
Mid-second.
I reckon so, mid-second Cody. I think he'll get the measure of the veteran at the very beginning. And I think then when he realises that, in fact, you know what, he's actually more powerful, a lot more striker than what's the guy's name?
Mizugaki?
That's the guy, I can't pronounce it.
Yeah.
Once that happens, I think he'll end up just second round coming out. He'll pick his shots and that's it all over.
What do you think, Zach, on that one? Is it a Garbrandt all around?
Yeah, I think Nick really nailed it on the head when he brought up that Thomas Almeida fight, which was an incredibly impressive performance from Cody. That was sort of a title eliminator between two of the biggest prospects, not only in the bantamweight division, but in the entire UFC. Both of them were just on fire. Everyone loved these guys. Really interesting striking arsenals. And Cody, like you said, is a really, really technical striker, while Mizugaki likes to just really wing it and get in the pocket and just trade blows, which I don't think is something that's going to play in his advantage against Cody. Cody's one of my favorite fighters in the UFC right now. I love watching him. Yep. He is incredibly talented, up-and-coming bantamweight. That being said, I don't think you can count Mizugaki out too soon. He has fought the best bantamweights in the division. I mean, his last fight was his last loss was Dominic Cruz, which there's no shame in losing to probably the best bantamweight of all time. Although he got absolutely outclassed in that fight, he's been in there with some of the best bantamweights. I think he could very well play the spoiler for Cody's perfect record. I could see that happening. But I mean, with the betting odds, you have to take Garbrandt in this.
Yeah, there's a psychological aspect to it as well, because Cody headlined his first event, and obviously the lights did not affect him, because he went out there and had the performance of his life. Yeah. So you think, well, 202 is not going to do anything for him, is it? Yeah. You know, because you always wonder about the shakiness of a fighter on a main card, but Cody goes out and gets it done, and I like that.
That's always good. Okay, let's move on to our next one then. Rick Story, 19-8. Donald Cerrone, 30-7. Take us through this one. These are some veterans in the UFC here.
Absolutely. These are both two guys who have been around for a long time. And Donald Cerrone is one of my favorite fighters ever. I love his mentality. I love the way he approaches fights. And he's just not stopped improving since he's been in the UFC, which is a really amazing thing for a 15-fight veteran to just keep getting better. That being said, Rick Story is the classic spoiler. He can't be counted out against anybody. He just came up against a very, very tough kickboxer in Tarek Saffiedine and ruined his night because he presses forward. Kickers need space to kick, and he didn't give him any of that. Donald Cerrone is also a kickboxer. His Muay Thai is his strongest asset. So if Rick Story can take that away from Donald Cerrone and close the distance the way Nate Diaz did against Donald Cerrone a long time ago, he could very well play the spoiler. I mean, Nate Diaz got Cerrone into the clinch, battered his body, and eventually got the finish. And Rick Story is a hard-nosed wrestler. He can take down anybody. He can be in there for 3 to 5 rounds with anybody, and you can't count him out of this fight. I really like Cerrone. I think he's just more technical than Tarek Saffiedine. I think he has more savvy in preventing wrestlers from closing the distance on him. He's recently developed the intercepting knee when people try and step into him, which has winded a lot of his opponents, and it's been really, really good for preserving the distance for him. He's long. He's looked great in his last fight, and he's at welterweight where he's going to feel very comfortable, I think. I think Cerrone is going to take it, but don't sleep on Story to play the spoiler here the way he's been doing it his whole career.
That sounds interesting. I would like to learn about this intercepting knee as well. How to do that. Mike, what are you thinking about this one, Story Cerrone?
For me, there's 2 fighters in this 204 that 202 even 204. That's a bit in the future, isn't it? It's Bisping, in 202. One of them is Cerrone, the cowboy. I love this guy. I think he's absolutely fantastic. He suits me more. As Zach said, he's more of a puncher. He's more of the Muay Thai, the kicking. How do you pronounce it? Cody or Cody? Cody. The guy he's just Cowboys just won from.
Patrick Cote.
Cote, sorry, yeah, Cote, yeah. That was a great fight. He's coming off a high. I think this has got the Cowboy written all over it. I followed the Cowboy for a long time when he first came in. He's my ideal type of fighter. I think that's it. Story, yes, I agree, as a grappler, as a wrestler, but I think this is going to be a stand-up fight, and I think it's got Cowboy all over it.
Nick, final?
I'm in agreement with both these fine gentlemen. Yeah, it's going to be a fight, and it's going to be Cerrone's. I mean, Rick Story, Zach's right. He can ruin anyone's afternoon. He is a man fridge as well. He literally looks like you pull him out of any electronic store. He's just a square of a man. But building on what Zach said, I think it's going to be interesting if they go to the ground, because Rick Story can hold you down, and Cerrone is an amazing jiu-jitsu practitioner. Got a lot of submission wins, but he's up now. He's not the big guy who can bully like he was at lightweight. He's now got he beat Charles Oliveira, he beat Patrick Cote, and subbed Oliveira, didn't he? But Rick Story is a different story, if you will.
Just waiting for that to come up.
Different story. Rick the Horror Story. He's really powerful. Despite a massive weight cut, still manages to put in a good 3-round showing most of the time as well. But I think Cerrone's going to pepper him because he's lighter and faster.
Yeah, it's going to be about ring craft for Story. If he can cut off the ring effectively on Cerrone, get him to the fence, get him in the clinch, get him to the ground, he has a chance. But if he's going to stand at a distance and let Cerrone tee off on him, he doesn't have the striking arsenal to compete.
Yeah, I will be very interested to see what happens if Cerrone gets put on his back, though. I'll be very interested. I'd love to see
he gets on his back.
If he gets on his back. I think just afterwards they should go, can we just see what it is? Or can we just have it, for instance, just like Nick Webb?
Just to see what Nick wants to see. It'll be interesting. It's a good main card fight. I mean, this will be one of those fights. I don't know if for DraftKings I would look at it. I might shy away from this one just because I think it's going to be very close.
Yeah.
You know, and as you say, you don't know if Story does get down or if Story does get a hold of him and just gets a hold. That could be an end of a fight. I mean, these guys are both big veterans in the fight circuit. So,
but from a mentality perspective, Cerrone is always going for the finish. More so than anybody else, he will not fight safe. He will not sort of stay at a distance, fling out his jab, and try and get away from Story. He's going to go for the knockout or the submission if it goes to the ground every single time. That's just how he fights.
Yeah, and he
sounds
turns
like
up.
every one of my ex-wives. All right, let's move on to our next fight. Anthony Johnson, 21-5 against Glover Teixeira, who is 25-4. This is going to be another awesome fight just before our main one. Mike, what do you think about this one?
Johnson's the second pick, the guy that I love the idea of the way they fight. It's very similar to Cerrone, if you can be that way, but for me, stand up. There's only 2 words to say to this. Johnson win. That's a given. I don't think there's going to be any doubt about that whatsoever. It will be a KO. You're going to ask me now to predict the round.
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Kreskin.
I'm going to say first round, I would say 2-minute 45.
Wow, that's quite
specific.
precise. I'm going to get you on the prices right.
If that is exact, I'll be very
If that is.
It needs down to ask Dana, if I get that right, do I win £1 million? That's a question. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But no, Johnson's going to win this. He's stand up. He's got it written all over, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, well, that's whistling through the teeth. What do you think? Teixeira is not someone you can pass by that easily.
You know, I agree with Max in that if I had to pick one fight on the card that would end in the first, it would be this one if pressed.
Yeah.
That's just because that's how Johnson fights. He comes out, he is the quintessential explosive power puncher. That's what he is. He throws some hard kicks, yeah, and he's a little bit one note in his striking, just dropping bombs. But then again, so is Glover. Glover's all about his jab, left hook, overhand right, and that's sort of what he's made his money off of in the past few years. The thing I really like about Johnson in this fight is his takedown defense. He almost never gets taken down, except by Daniel Cormier, and there's really no shame in being taken down by an Olympic wrestler. I can't really see Glover getting this to the ground. His takedowns mostly come out of the clinch and not off the shot, and I just don't see him being able to muscle Anthony Johnson onto the mat. And then when it's stand-up, you know, Glover has very respectable stand-up. He lands some knockouts, but I think he's just going to have so much trouble with the absolute raw power of Anthony Johnson. Both these guys have been in the octagon with the best of the best, you know. Glover has fought John Jones. Johnson knocked out Gustafsson. So, I mean, Gustafsson is a really polished striker, and Johnson handled him. So, I mean, with Johnson, he's the epitome of the guy who just takes one. And I think that Glover is going to have a tough time with his power eventually as the fight wears on, if it gets out of the first. I mean, Johnson's always going in there for a first-round knockout, and I think there's a really good shot of that happening. Glover's getting older. You know, his chin's not holding up quite as well. Everyone forgets Bader shook Glover's bell before Glover actually landed the knockout, and Bader doesn't have anywhere near the power or the striking arsenal that Johnson does. So I think it's probably going to be a tough night for Glover.
All right. What are you thinking on this one, Nick? You were whistling through your teeth earlier.
A little bit, because I was quite surprised that Glover was such an underdog, you know?
Well?
Because he's on a 3-fight win streak. It's not you know, Johnson lost the title but hasn't lost since, or lost his attempt to get the title. It's interesting, Zach, you bring up Gustafsson, a bit more of an in-and-out fighter, whereas Glover likes to push forward all the time, and that's why I think he might give Johnson some problems, because Johnson's takedown defense, as you say, 73%, one of the highest in the light heavyweight division, spectacular, but Glover's got an uppercut, and Johnson likes to duck down, defend you at the hips, and I think Glover's going to come forward and give him problems, I really do, and the thing about Glover, he's not a one-trick pony. Say Johnson, yeah, dynamite in his hands. You know, if he touches you or shakes your hand too hard, he's knocking your family out. You know, that's it. You know, you'd be waking up a couple of months later going, what the hell happened? Yeah. But I think Glover's just got a little bit more to give him, and yeah, I don't think he's immune. I don't think he's immune to getting rattled, is our Johnson. So I think Glover's in with more than a chance.
I disagree. I think Glover moving forward, I think is prime for Johnson. Him trying to take whatever he needs to do moving forward. You make mistakes when you go forward, in my opinion. When you're fighting, you go forward, you make mistakes, you leave the chin open. All he's got to do is a left jab, and that's like a right-hander off someone. So I think that if he wants to move forward, that's great, but he's got an uppercut. They watch videos. Yeah. They know what's happening.
Yeah, I think one thing to keep in mind is Glover moves forward in order to instigate the exchange, and then he counter punches.
Yes.
His finger's always on the trigger with his counter left hook, and then right over the top. So he's always moving forward, waiting for that punch to come, and then coming with the left right. So I think he might be surprised by the speed of Johnson, and if Johnson throws a few feints out there in the beginning and Glover's finger's on the trigger, he's going to be swinging at air, and then he's going to be a little bit more hesitant. There's definitely a lot of ways this can go, and like you said, Glover, he is a really, really good fighter, and he's been in there with the best, but I think that the explosiveness of Johnson is going to be too much for him to handle.
Unless Glover can take it away against the cage. Again, I don't hold huge, but that's my kind of...
A lot of things up in the air with you guys. We're not sure. Of course, you could go to DraftKings. You're going to play along. Haymaker special, $125,000. Let's talk about the main one first. We're going to get into it a little bit later, but we're going to talk about the main one, right? Welterweight bout, 5 rounds. Conor McGregor. That's right. 10,408. Diaz, 9,200. 5 months ago, this fight gave us a result. Will this result be any different? What are you thinking here, Mike?
No.
No?
Simple answer, no. I think that it's been a lot in the press, especially over here in the UK, with regards to Conor McGregor spending $300,000 on his fight camp. You know, and I don't like fighters. I'll be honest with you. I've never done it myself. I don't like fighters that are very loud and brash and say what they're going to do. I think that's an emotion, and it shows a weakness in my personal opinion. But I think Diaz hasn't said anything. He's just said, I've done the training. I'm going to get in there and do what I'm going to go and do. I think it's a biological thing as much as anything else. I don't think Conor McGregor has the. Sorry, mate, but yeah, I think you've got the ability to go up 20 odd pounds and stay there with Diaz. Diaz is at that weight. Conor McGregor's got to go up. If it goes to ground, then I think Diaz just allowing him and tire him out. Yes, Conor McGregor did actually do some damage in the 196. I don't think he's got the punching power. And I don't think, as Nick said a while ago, you know, with regards to Diaz, he's got striking. I think this has got another Diaz win, McGregor upset.
Diaz, all right, Zach, let's figure this out. Is Conor not going to have the strength trying to go up this weight class to be able to compete with someone like Diaz?
You know, I would be wary to say Conor doesn't have the strength. Punching Nate Diaz is not like punching a featherweight in that Nate Diaz isn't just a welterweight, a true welterweight now, as opposed to where he was a lightweight previously. He's also one of the most durable fighters in the UFC. Mm-hmm. Him and his brother are just known for having granite chins. So I think, yeah, Conor lit him up in that first round, but he wasn't even phased at all. And it's not to say that Conor doesn't have punching power. It's to say that Nate is just extremely durable guy. And I think that his chin is just always going to hold up. I don't really see Conor being able to land enough on him to really wear him out. And the thing about Nate is he doesn't just hold up. He seems to get stronger and more aggressive the more of a beating he takes. And that's what we saw in that first fight. I really like Nate's range here. I like that he's outsized to McGregor. I think that as opposed to McGregor, he has the option of where the fight goes. I think if he wants the fight to go to the ground, he has that option. And if he wants the fight to stay standing, he also has that option. And I always want to side with the people who can dictate where the fight's going to take place. And because of that, I'm also going with Nate. I don't really think that we saw anything in the first fight to prove that anything's going to be different here. I mean, training camps are obviously huge and making the adjustments are obviously extremely important. But that said, I just think Nate has the durability, the size, and the strength. And, you know, you can't sleep on his boxing chops. His solid boxing, his traditional jiu-jitsu, he's extremely well-rounded. And I just don't think that McGregor's making a wise choice by jumping up 2 weight classes to fight somebody who is longer than him, stronger than him. And, you know, maybe he is a little bit more creative on the feet, but you're not going to put Nate away with a few straight lefts the way you put everybody else away. So I do like Nate in this fight. I think that, you know, if he is having a tough time on the feet, he'll shoot for a takedown or he'll pull guard, and he's, you know, perfectly capable off of his back to finish a fight. And I think Nate's going to get another finish. I don't think it's going to come as early. I think he's going to wear Conor down, and the finish is going to come in the 4th.
Yep. Oh, bold prediction. Nick, what are you thinking about this as well? Is it going to be a Diaz all the way around?
I'm on Team Diaz as well. I have to agree with these two gentlemen again. I don't see anything different. I don't see how it can play out differently. Mike brings up a good point. No, there's certain limits to how much muscle you can put on a body, and McGregor doesn't have the frame for 170. If he did, he'd fight at 170. McGregor's perfect where he is.
Absolutely.
And then again, we get the problem of if he puts on weight, does he have to have a mega cut down for his title defense?
Right.
Or does he keep around the 150 so it's not so hard? So that'll be interesting to see what it looks like on Friday morning at the weight cut. It's interesting. Yeah, Nate Diaz looked like he took a lot of damage, but you got to remember, he's got scar tissue, a face of scar tissue. You sneeze on him, he's going to bleed. You know, that doesn't mean you've been hitting him hard. He just wears it badly. He takes it well, wears it badly. Yeah. So only a couple of good jabs from McGregor. That's all there really was. And yeah, I just don't see McGregor being able to do anything. I don't think he's got the power or the reach to hit Diaz enough in the face to knock him out. And as you're right, if Diaz gets bored, he's just going to take him down, isn't he? He's just going to grab him and take him down. And one more thing, Conor has lost the aegis of the immortal. When you're undefeated, the Anderson Silva, you know, you've got big brass ones, and you've always got that edge on someone, that I'm immortal. You know, the Anderson Silva, I can't be beaten. Not only has Conor not got that, Nate Diaz is holding it for him, going, remember this? Remember your undefeated streak? So I think the psychological advantage is going to be even more on Diaz's side, and it's not like he's not going to use it or mention it during the fight, is he? Right. Diaz is going to be in his face going, remember when I beat you? Remember? He's going to be showing him on his phone, winding him up.
I'm just picturing you holding Conor McGregor's imaginary testicles.
Yeah, just like that.
That's what we got. Hey guys, it's all about going to DraftKings. Play along. DraftKings.co.uk if you're in the UK. DraftKings.com if you're in the US and Canada. Oh my gosh, UFC 202 is gonna be so exciting. Join our Haymaker special, 125,000 up for grabs. Loads of great prizes. You could win big. UFC 202. Welcome to the big time.